As many of you would know by now, the Criminal Activity DLC has been out for some time. Now, I've been able to invest quite a serious amount of time into this DLC. I've been able to try out all of the weapons, try out all of the maps, and of course invest some serious time into the new Bounty Hunter mode. So today I thought it'd be a good idea to take a step aside and give you guys an overview of how this DLC is. There's lots of you out there probably borderline considering getting premium, and lots of you out there that are considering getting this when it drops on the 30th of June. So today I wanted to provide you a decent insight into how the DLC is and whether or not it's really worth your time. So first and foremost, let's start with the weapons. As you guys know, there are 4 weapons in the DLC: the M1A1, the KSG-12, the FAL, and the SG-510. So let's kick off with the M1A1. What's interesting about this weapon is that it's actually available to everybody and not just those who have the DLC. Now, if you've used this weapon, you'll eventually come to understand that it's basically just a standard definition SMG, which really doesn't have anything to offer to the table. The only slight versatility it has is by adding the extended grip and of course having that barrel drum magazine, which has lots of ammunition for an SMG, but ultimately it's not really the kind of gun that I would use. Next up, we have the FAL battle rifle, which is available for the criminal faction. Now, there is a review on screen now if you guys fancy seeing this thing in full detail, but ultimately the FAL is a very powerful and very versatile weapon. I would definitely recommend investing quite a bit of time in this. Although it's quite taxing to use in terms of recoil, it eventually pays off because you will ultimately get lots of kills. On the flip side, we have the SG-510, which is available to the police faction, and the SG-510 is slightly less heavy hitting than the FAL, but definitely has a lot more control, so it can actually kind of be used as the purpose it was intended for, which is a battle rifle with lots of ammunition which can fire lots of bullets at a pretty decent rate. This too is another battle rifle that I would definitely invest lots of time into unlocking all the attachments and trying to do your best with it, because at the end of the day it is a battle rifle which will reward you very well for playing in a certain manner. Now we have the KSG-12, and this is just your basic standalone shotgun shoot shit. Very simplistic. It doesn't have a huge range, it doesn't have a huge amount of damage. The best way to summarize this weapon is that it does everything okay. It doesn't do anything particularly well, it doesn't do anything extravagantly and something terribly, it just does everything okay. And I suppose that's kind of what you're looking for in a shotgun, but definitely not something that I would play with on a regular basis, but mostly that's because I'm just not a shotgun person. As for the maps in the Criminal Activity DLC, I'm very much split in some circumstances. Now first up, I'm going to talk about Backwards, because this emulates a lot of the traditional Battlefield maps that we're used to, really open, lots of space, and I've generally had some good times on this map, and it certainly works when there's lots of players on there too. I'd strongly suggest it for 64 player based modes. And the maps for Battlefield Hardline DLC always have this kind of reflection of having a bit more character, and I felt like Backwards had a lot of character to offer, and it definitely fit in, and it definitely felt like a kind of map that I would play quite a bit. Speaking of character, then there is Code Blue, and this is basically a nightclub which has loads of lights and really distracting but kind of pumping music. I don't really know how to explain it. I kind of wish it wasn't there, but at the same time, it would lose its touch if it wasn't there, you know? But it has a very nice urban environment to it. It has this sort of gritty club scene with lots of glowing stuff and lots of particle effects, and it's a really good looking map, and I could definitely see lots of people enjoying this map. It's very well structured as well. I feel like it's a very versatile map as well that people are going to invest a lot of time in and probably enjoy quite a bit. In fact, it's probably my favourite map on the DLC as a whole. Moving on, we have Black Friday. Now, Black Friday is somewhat of a strange map because it kind of plays like Metro, but it's more structured than Metro. The way I like to look at Black Friday is structured chaos. Now, this map is essentially a very choke point related map, which means that there's lots of places and lots of situations where there's going to be large numbers of infantry battling out to try and gain control. And I'm a big fan of that. But what Black Friday does is that it has lots of these back lanes and secret entrances and places that you can go into to try and distort the enemy. It can be really really frustrating if you're on the losing team and feel like a bit of a clusterfuck, but at the same time, if you have a coordinated group of guys together and you flank in certain positions, I think people are going to find this map a very rewarding one to play. And finally, we have the Bee. Now, I feel like this is a very underrated map as people kind of first saw it, because after playing a couple of rounds of blood money and heists on it, the Bee is actually a very fun map to play. It's got a lot of sort of alleyway-based situations and tight corners, and it makes for a very good experience. There's lots of infantry combat in close quarter situations, and definitely lots of routes to flank around and enjoy. In fact, I'd probably rate this 3rd out of the 4, Black Friday being the 4th, Code Blue being the 1st, and Backwards being 2nd. But I do have to say, as a whole, the maps of the DLC are all pretty good. None of them are particularly bad, but not really many of them are particularly amazing either. Unfortunately, I feel like they lack a certain amount of aestheticness to them, because they're all basically recycled elements from the single player except for Backwards, and they all emulate a lot of what we've seen before, except for Code Blue, which tried something a bit new with the nightclub and the lights, which was a nice touch to see. It's just kind of a case of, it's not bad, but it's not amazing. I'd put them in the good category though. Now, if I was to compare this to, per se, Battlefield 4, the first DLC of Battlefield 4 was China Rising, which was absolutely shit in every way possible. There was no good maps except for maybe Silk Road, and to be honest with you, it was just a bad DLC. But when it comes to this DLC, I feel like A, has a lot more premise, B, there isn't anything particularly wrong with it, and C, it's pretty good overall to play. Now, of course, the new DLC brought in a new patch, which definitely balances things up and somewhat improved the netcode so that it's on par with Battlefield 4 now. So essentially, we do have a DLC which has lots of incredibly good elements, lots of good ideas, and lots of things going on for it. Just unfortunately, it kind of lacks a certain level of, I don't really know how to put it. It lacks kind of creativity and innovation. The new mode specifically, which is Bounty Hunter mode, is basically kill confirmed, and the spawns in it are absolutely terrible. The spawning in general in terms of team deathmatch basically seems to be the spawns for Bounty Hunter, and ultimately that just doesn't work. I was kind of hoping for this mode to be a bit more tactical and a bit more kind of tactically aware of things, but instead we're just spawning next to enemies. It's a violent bloodbath. Whoever collects the most coins wins. Now, of course, Criminal Activity does have, of course, the Easter egg hunts and lots of other things going on for it as well that people can enjoy. I know I definitely will. And ultimately, it came down to one thing. If you really like Hardline, if you're having a blast playing the baseline version of the game and you really enjoy game modes like heists and blood money, I would totally recommend that you get this DLC. It's got a lot offering for you. But if you're not really that crazy about the game and you don't really care about whether or not there is new content and it doesn't really appeal to you unless it was something really extravagant, I wouldn't really recommend having a go at this DLC. So guys, it's been me, TheTacticalBrit. I hope you guys enjoyed this video today, and I'll see you again soon with some more Hardline and Battlefield 4 content.